Am I a burden?
What? Hey, what is going on?
You do everything for me. It's not fair.
I'm your mom. It's my job to take care of you when you need me. And you need me.
Mom?
You may not understand this right now, but I am doing what I know is best for you.
I know that I've scared you, but I will spend every minute of our lives making sure you never feel that way again. I'm your mom.
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are happy to be in partnership with HULU Entertainment to present a conversation with up-and-coming director Anish Shinganti. Joining me from HULU Entertainment is Ajit Samra. Welcome, Anish.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So congratulations. I mean, Run was certainly a project that caught everyone's attention, highly rated on Hulu. Why was that your follow-up to Searching?
It's funny because in a lot of ways, I think like Run and Searching are very much films that are like talking to each other just in a totally different language. Because when we were making Searching, which for those who don't know is like a very complex, convoluted, hyper modern, mystery that is like takes place all on computer screens. The whole time I was making that movie and waiting as each edit would take 15 minutes to see as opposed to like 10 seconds or 5 seconds, I was just like, man, I can't wait to make a normal movie. I can't wait to do the opposite of that. So I think in a lot of ways, Run came out of this desire to not be put in a box and to not be a filmmaker who could have easily gone into the direction of just being the tech person and doing these like tech-driven stories and computer screen narratives and all that stuff. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could do the opposite, that I could completely get rid of a gimmick, and just put one character or two characters with one camera in one house. And instead of telling a complex story, tell an extremely simple story and see if I could still kind of put together a movie that was thrilling and exciting and all that stuff without any of the sort of like tools that we really relied heavily on with Searching. And I think like also in a lot of ways it's the opposite of Searching, it's the anti-Searching. Even when you look at the theme of the movie and what it's talking about, like in one story you have a parent will do anything for their kid in a positive way. And then on the other story, you have a parent will do anything for their kid in the most negative way. And I think like that balance, they're very much talking to each other. And I think the goal after this movie is to maybe kind of like recalibrate somewhere around the center and maybe open myself up to a non-contained story. But it was always sort of a response to Searching in a very, very kind of direct way in my head.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting, both Searching and Run. I love both of the movies. I like thrillers are my genre, it's my thing. And I think it's so interesting in this time because of COVID, productions are just, because of COVID, they're trying to keep cast and crew members to a very low amount. But if I'm not mistaken, you shot Run before COVID. And what was your intention in keeping like a very, very small cast and like this, like 2 or 3 characters? And, how did you keep those tensions high?
Yeah, Run was shot in basically Searching came out August 28th of 2018. And September 1 of 2018, I got on a flight to Winnipeg, to Canada to start living there for 4.5 months. So I didn't even get to see Searching come out, like it was like we were making that move. We were starting to put together the pieces of Run while Searching was coming out. And that's one lesson that I'll always learn to myself, like, or taught myself, is like, man, like the whole point of making these things is to just be there at the end. And like, I would, next time I do this, if theaters are still around, and if I ever get lucky to make one, I'm like, I'm going to hang out in a movie theater for like 2 weeks before thinking about the next thing. But yeah, it was made very much outside of the COVID period. Again, like I wanted to make a movie that sort of felt like the movies that I grew up watching. Like I was like the reason that I even thought of going into filmmaking was because of M. Night Shyamalan's like photo in India West magazine. And like that to me, so I got into his work, and he is so inspired by Hitchcock that I got into Hitchcock's work. And like, I wanted to make a movie that was like reminiscent of those movies, where there's no reliance on blood. It's not blood and gore driven, it's just a movie that's like where the tension is coming from, like, oh, is that character going to find out that I've been using the phone? Like, can I reach that thing in the top drawer? Can I like use the computer and find out this information? It's nothing like, escape from the person running the knife until it becomes that at the end of the film. But that was always the goal, to make something small and extremely isolated, was to just be like, kind of get over a fear in my own head of not relying on a tool, because everything that I had made up until this point, when I was a kid, I used to work at Google and make commercials for them. Searching, like, it was always like, there's always a gimmick. There was always something that you could say, yeah, but it's this story, but it's all told through montage, or it's all told through a Google slideshow, or it's all told through Google Glass, or it's all told through a computer screen. It's all told backwards. Like, there's so many like all told X way in my career that I wanted to be like, I don't have an intention of staying in that. I want to, make normal movies too. And so like, I think to go the opposite direction, it was to tackle a fear in a lot of ways.
Now, would you say as a genre that thrillers are your sweet spot?
I think I like my favorite types of movies are thrilling movies, and so far thrillers have been a very good kind of bullseye in that, as far as that Venn diagram goes, like where they kind of coincide. But the next film that I'm doing is like a kind of like more of an Ocean's 11 heist movie, and that is not like in the same way it's not like characters' death is what's at stake here. So I like films that are like very gripping and have momentum to them. And so far those have been thrillers, but I don't plan on staying in that lane forever. Although like, so far it's not broke. So let's just keep kind of tinkering, or not. It's not completely broken.
Yeah. And just kind of going to that genre aspect, and just thinking of your themes. I've seen like that family theme kind of running through your past two films. And even the one you did for kind of Google Glass, I think you traveled to India. And, do you pull, when you're like thinking about writing or directing, do you pull any influence from your Indian American heritage, or just, your personal, background, your upbringing, et cetera, like, where you grew up?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think it's like a personal, like, I feel like kind of like, I understand why, but I also feel upset that in 2 movies so far, I haven't made a movie that's led by like an Indian person, yet, which is, I think the absolution of my sins will be in the next film. But like yes, I think like, especially with Run, funny enough, but like with Searching, when we were writing it, I was always early on like being like, okay, this has to be an Indian American family. And then the more we wrote the characters, I just didn't feel like I ever saw that dynamic in an Indian American family. And I was just like, I feel like it would feel more false, like that this is the relationship between the parent, the dad, and the kid, but I had seen that relationship in like East Asian families. And so I was just like, I think while still staying true to the Silicon Valley-ness of it, we should pivot over to that. And then with Run's a little different, but like, I think like a lot of Run was based less on the heritage and more on my mom, with the exception of the main motivation. Like there's a lot of things that kind of like a lot of quirks and tiny traits of like Diane or Sarah Paulson's character, like who that like really I took from my mom, and like elements of her that I took from my mom. I think the overall obsession or like repetition of this family theme, I think that ultimately is like the most Indian American thing that I could have, that kind of sticks with me, because like family is very important in my life. And I think every single thing that I've made, from the Google Glass video to Searching to Run, even to our next film, there's a lot of family involved in it. And I think like that element of it comes very much from my upbringing.
Now, originally, Run was going to be released, going to be four-walled in theaters.
Yeah.
And then it switched to Hulu, where it came out digitally. Were you disappointed? How were you? I mean, obviously, going digital exposes it to a much broader audience than would have ever seen it in theaters. But I know a lot of creators and directors like to have their movies play in theaters. So what was that process like? Was it much of an adjustment?
Yeah, it was an adjustment. I mean, I would be lying if I said I was not disappointed that it couldn't go to theaters, but I was not disappointed that it was going to Hulu. You know, like there was a difference. That there was like a big time gap between those 2 points. There was the point where it left theaters, and then there was the point that it went to Hulu. The second point I was happy with. The first point was like a natural disappointment. But that said, I at least was not told on the morning of that it was going away, which is something that a few filmmakers in the last couple of days have had to deal with. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, it was funny because Searching was made, you know, with 5 people. We hoped that maybe 10 people would watch it. That movie ends up going theatrical distribution worldwide, having amazing reception. This film, we're like started off being like, it's going worldwide theatrical distribution, and then it goes the other direction, you know? And I think like there's a weird little, in the spirit of everything being the opposite, I thought that was quite fitting. But yeah, I mean, like, you're disappointed, like it's a bummer, but at the same time, it's not like your peers are getting the opportunity. It's like everyone kind of like, it goes away. We still have a movie coming out. That's great. You know, like there's a lot of like pros to look at it. And like every time I felt bad, I would just like open the New York Times and be like, all right, we're chilling. Like everything's fine. You know, like everyone's healthy and all that stuff. So, that part was a little bit of a disappointment, an understandable one. And at the same time, the decision to go to Hulu was one we were really excited about. Like Hulu was a place that, like, you know, at that point, it's not a factory, you know, it's not putting out a thing every day, you know, like when a Hulu movie comes out, it's like, it's a thing, you know? And like, I think like to be able to go to a place that had not yet be turned into that thing where it's like shipping out every day, it was like, it made our film feel, and the way they actually pulled it off, feel like an event. And I think like it turned, based on the response, based on the number of people who've seen it, like that was an extremely successful sort of like, both the pitch was extremely alluring and the execution was extremely successful as far as like making a splash goes. And at the end of the day, like that's what we care about, especially in this new light of things. So yes, disappointed not going to theatrical, happy with going to Hulu. I will see what happens to the industry for the next one. I think everyone's sort of up in the air on that.
As a quick follow-up, I mean,
Yeah.
It seems, you know, obviously you alluded to the most recent news from Warner Media.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think we're headed? I mean, do you think that streaming is going to become a much bigger player? Or do you think that after things settle down, that people will return to traditional theaters in enough volume to make that experience worthwhile and viable?
Yes to both. I think like what's going to happen is this is a prediction on December of 2020. So we got to be clear on that. I think getting rid of all the emotion I feel towards this, I think that current theater companies will not be able to exist. I think all of our theaters will still exist. They'll get bought out by the distributors, and then each distributor will have their own set of theaters. Universal will have their own set, Lionsgate will have their own set, Paramount will have their own set. And I think that the movies that go there will only be the films that are the big, like, ignoring this next year crop of Warner Brother movies, like The Matrix 4s will still get out to theaters. figuratively Matrix movies, those scale movies. And then on top of that, like once everybody has these streaming services, every single studio will have a very specific streaming service that we will get onto, pay for. And then once everyone has that, they'll start putting paywalls or raising prices on each one of them. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't think a movie like Run goes to theaters anymore. You know, like I don't think that there's, if I'm being really honest, I would love for it to, but like without a major star or me being a Chris Nolan type person. So I think we're going to just see a huge differentiator of types of projects that go to theaters, from scale, or whether it's the weight that the people behind the project are being able to pull to get it to theaters. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Do you think it kind of pulls away from kind of how the viewer sees your film? So, you know, Run was released on streaming on Hulu, and do you feel like it kind of took away? Do you feel like, you know, there was something that could have been enhanced if we did go into theaters and watch it? Or do you feel like, you know, the same experience was kind of sort of there?
No, it's definitely not the same experience. It's a different experience. And I don't think it was like the question people asked of like, do I need to watch Searching on a computer screen? You know, and it's just like, no, we actually made it for the theater. You know, we made it so that like this domestic object that you look at all the time was going to get blown up, and like, can you treat that cinematically? You know, and like, but at the same time, you couldn't devalidate the experience of watching Searching on a computer screen. And I think in a lot of ways there is some kind of like hand-in-hand elements of watching Run at Home, which is a film about a girl trying to escape her home after being stuck in it or trapped in it unknowingly for her entire life. I think that sort of has like a parallel to it. We made the movie for the big screen, you know, and like half of our conversations with Lionsgate were always about, which was a studio that we were making with at the time, were about making it theatrical and crossing the theatrical bar, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, there's an element that definitely feel like we're missing. And, but at the same time, like it's only missing from one, and you gain something else with a different kind of medium.
Yeah. It's quickly, I feel like it was really timely though. It all really just fit together. You know, it's a movie about at home and everyone's in quarantine, unfortunately, you know, everything going on in the world. But I feel like it just made it that much more tension driven and very just, you know, it kind of put you in that space. So I thought that was interesting.
I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you for saying that.
Now, Anish, you mentioned Chris Nolan, which you're still early enough in your career that perhaps this will make sense. Would you prefer to have a career that's more Chris Nolan, or would you prefer to have a career, a different type of career that maybe would offer you a greater opportunity to tell a greater range of stories? The pressure of having a career like Chris Nolan seems to be something worth considering versus maybe having a career that's more akin to a marathoner than a sprinter.
Yeah, that's very well put. If I had to use Chris Nolan as an example, I think I would probably like the career of Chris Nolan mixed with like a Danny Boyle or Steven Soderbergh. If I had to use an entirely other filmmaker, I think Spielberg is where I like land. And like, it's like, I know like the most obvious, you know, just kind of like, but like what I like about that is that like, I mean, I don't want to ever do the same thing twice or do it like too many times, like the same thing. Cause I don't want to be put into a box. And you can see that with people like Chris Nolan, who sort of like, I like, dude, that guy's like on my pedestal, but like it's very easy to parody his work, you know, it's because you do the same thing. And like, it happened with M. Night, it happened with like, it happens with anybody who has a distinct style, you know, and like, but it doesn't happen with Danny Boyle. It doesn't happen with Steven Soderbergh because they always switch. They're going from like Ocean's 11 to Contagion to like Logan Lucky to, you know, The Nick, you know, there's all these different kind of projects. So I think Spielberg, I think, did it like most effectively as far as being able to go from Schindler's List to Saving Private Ryan to Minority Report to Catch Me If You Can. Like those are different ranges and you can still see his touch in those films, but like without being sort of easily parodyable. And one of the ways that I plan on hopefully not falling into that direction, I think I'm gonna try and just stop writing the stuff that I make after the next project for a little bit. Because I think like if I continue to write, like you're gonna see those marks that like only I could to a point, or to only I could do, to the point that it starts becoming something that is like looked at with a little bit more derision than it is now. That's a good question.
Yeah, super
Thank
interesting.
you.
So kind of just going off of that, like, who are some of your influences, in your work, whether, it's a writer, director, and, you said M. Night and you said Hitchcock, and, both amazing people definitely in that space. But, kind of just going off what you're saying, do you feel like, you'd be the first one, besides, Steven, to kind of do that? Or, what's that path and influence and inspiration looking like for you?
Dude, that's an answer that changes every day. It's an answer that changes based on what project that I'm working on, because oftentimes like my inspirations will be the people who did the best kind of job at the specific genre that I'm currently working on. So I'll study their films. But as far as like, if you're asking me for my kind of all times, like, I mean, like, yeah, M. Night, Danny Boyle, Steven Soderbergh, Chris Nolan, Steven Spielberg, Ava, Sofia Coppola, Mani Ratnam in Hindi and Telugu work, Sanjay Leela Bhansali in Hindi work, Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook. Like, I could just, this would be a boring session. But there's people who whose films like that, Damien Chazelle recently, Ari Aster recently, it's just, these are movies that you put in the background and then you just watch and then you get really mad, because every time I watch those films, I just get upset because I'm like, I'm not that. I can't do that. And so those are the ones that you try to like sort of emulate and stick behind.
That's interesting. So do you like pull inspiration from anywhere else? Like, just not, even talking about film, like, do you just pull it from anywhere else? Because I feel like you're right. It is very timely and kind of what's out there right now, what genre you're kind of picking at. But anywhere else, do you feel like, you're pulling inspiration from? And if you're not, that's totally fine.
Sorry, what do you mean? Like different filmmakers or outside of film?
I said outside of film, yeah.
Like basically different media, copy. There's like some photography, there's some like literature. like books, I read a lot. There's a lot of like reading that I'm doing, but it's oftentimes very, very tied to kind of, what I'm making. So like right now, everything I'm reading a book called Dear in America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen, by Jose Antonio Vargas. I think which is a book very kind of timely with what I'm writing next. So I think a lot of that comes from being singularly focused on film. I've always been that person, for better or for worse, that has known exactly what they wanted to do since I was a kid, which is a curse and a blessing, because I look at people like my brother, who is such a multi-hyphenate, because he never knew early on he would go into politics, and he'd go to international relations, then he'd go to music, then he'd go to rap, then now he's like a cool human being who can have all these conversations with people. And I'm like, yeah, I know everything about movies, and that's it, and so I'm like a very, very specific sort of trivia game helper, but for the most part, all of my kind of work and world studies of stuff have been sort of through the projects that I'm interested in, and then from traveling.
So we know the Ocean's 11 type movie. Is that the project that you're currently writing?
Yeah.
What more can you share with us?
Well, it's an Ocean's movie that this book is kind of relevant for, but no, basically it's it is a heist film, and it is a heist film set against the backdrop of the American immigration industry, and immigration politics. And so so it kind of concerns itself with that whole world, while being hopefully a new take on a heist film. I think the best heist films are ones that heist films have been done so many times before. They're like rom-coms that you need a new hook into it to be exciting, and I think we found something very interesting for a heist film that hasn't been done before yet, that is in that world. As it's not about stealing money or stealing gold or breaking into a casino, So something a little different.
It sounds like it's something even bigger.
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely more emotional.
Yeah, and kind of just going off of that, are there any specific like stories or roles that you personally would like to see more in TV or film, or that you are working on, and kind of want to venture out to, kind of after you just kind of this thriller space?
Can you clarify the question? Like more types of different types of roles that I want to see.
Yeah, and I guess I was speaking specifically to you. In the past two films, you've told a story about Asian American family, and also this one a story about disabled woman, and just two women in a film. And I think it's very diverse. And are there any ones kind of that you want to go forward? Whether you're making like anyone that you want to exemplify, or
yeah, bro, us. Like I want to make. I feel like yeah, us. Which is the next one. The next one will be led by an Indian American guy or Indian guy. And then I still want to kind of stay in that space. I've always wanted, like I feel there's a I mean, each of us on this thing, it's just like there's like this sense of responsibility and duty that we all feel towards our own respective backgrounds, that all, I guess, all of us on this chat here, like, our respective cultures are not treated or represented in a way that is qualitative or quantitative enough, in the mainstream. And I think like that's, if I am just making movies that have nothing to do with that, I will have failed, as a human being before, not as a filmmaker. Maybe those movies are hyper successful, but like, I think, that would be the next thing that I want to do. But after making Searching and after making Run, I think like there's very few things that are cooler than the experience of the people that you made a movie for, showing you how much it meant to them. Like, I'm getting just chills thinking about it. Like, it is like, I had no idea. Like, dude, when we made Searching, it was not about being this Asian American movie. I was just a kid making a movie like anybody who could have been in that film. Like what I mean? Like, it's like, dude, John Cho wants to be in it. Go shoot it tomorrow. Like before he says no, kind of a deal. So like, it was not a decision as far as like looking around the world, and like, it was not like, there were other movies that get into marketing before they even start shooting, and like, this was not one of those movies. We just made the movie, and then somebody on the red carpet told us like, this is the first thriller starring an Asian American ever. And I was just like, what? And then, and so when we started making Run, we knew that it had been a while since a disabled character had played, or disabled actor had actually played a disabled character in a film. But like, we didn't know when. We just knew that it'd been a minute. And then we found out in the press, like before the Hulu announcement, that it was like the 40s, and like World War II. And like, to hear the response of the disabled community, whether it's on Letterboxd or through through journals or publications or whatever, or through Kira, the film star, like, that's been like, it's like, dude, like, even if we made a bad, like, that's such a cool feeling to like have people say that what you made mattered in some way. And it's like, I don't want to ever throw that away. Like, that's a responsibility that we all have as filmmakers and storytellers.
I agree. That's amazing.
So Anish, is the reality like what you imagined?
Hold on, sorry, I gotta charge my laptop. Otherwise, it's gonna die.
Okay, we're just about. This is my last question, and Ajit, I'll let you finish it.
Well, if I wouldn't even have time for this, like 30 seconds before this dies. Okay, we're good. We are good. Okay. Sorry, Gil, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, how different is the reality of being a real bona fide filmmaker, how different is it than what you used to dream about?
It's a lot more boring. It's like, it's, it's really funny. Like, that's a good question. You look growing up, like, you're just like, first of all, I'm not at the level that I all of the filmmakers who I grew up with were at, even when I was looking at them. I'm still like, I think quite objectively, I think there's a lot that I have to prove and a lot that people have to see from me before I even get close to that conversation.
Maybe, but dude, you've had 2 movies. I mean, Sarah Paulson, John Cho, you know, I mean, that have made it onto the big screen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something.
Yes, it's something, but yeah, okay. But I will like, you know, I think like to the picture that I had in my head of what like success as a filmmaker looks like was filled with a lot more activity, you know, and I think and maybe this is because I don't look at other people's materials. I like really try and write my own stuff. And so I silo myself away, but like filmmaking to me and being sort of like so far, like my name being attached to projects that some people get excited about, like to whatever small degree or big degree, like it's just like you get long periods of inactivity where it's like where you're outside of a movie's release, where like nobody really, and because I am not Ryan Coogler, I am not Ava, I am not Sophia Cope, I'm not somebody who like at any point is hot, you know, like I'm sort of like, when I have a movie coming out, things will kind of pick up a little bit. And like when it's not, things kind of die down. And I like that. I like being able to just not be in Hollywood and stuff. And then around the film's release, like you feel like, wow, I'm part of this industry. I'm so cool. And then 2 weeks from now, it's just like nothing. It's silence, you know, and I'll be like, man, I remember that call that I had 2 weeks ago. I was so cool. But no, it's a lot more kind of start and stop.
They asked for your ID at 7-Eleven 2 weeks from now.
Well, Anish, I guess I'll ask the last question. I feel like this is a more inspirational one for, you know, anyone else that is watching this. So I guess, you know, what would you tell your younger self, like, you know, someone who's, you know, in their teens and who's trying to, you know, go on the path you are, and, you know, what would you tell that person? And yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't tell myself anything different because I think like I like the situation I'm at now, and I think I would throw that off course if I went back.
Well, I know Ajit earlier was saying that when he was a kid in Baltimore, and he just graduated from college actually, but so it wasn't that long ago, but growing up in Baltimore, the career that he has now working in Hollywood and starting this new think tank, that it just seems so far away. So I know you're from Seattle, which is a lot, or Washington State, which is a lot closer, but what advice would you give to that kid who just thinks it's the impossible to even dream that high, that you would one day be a part of such a large, paramount experience like making movies?
Wow, that would put it in perspective. The person that got me into filmmaking, it took one person. I was like literally on the toilet stall of my parents' bathroom on reading a copy of India West, which is like this Desi magazine that would come out once a month or whatever. And I opened a page up to see one filmmaker who looked like me, and I was like, oh, I want to do that too. And I think like what we're seeing now, hopefully, is a little bit more proliferation of people who look like us. Whatever us means. And I hope that is enough. I hope that is enough a little bit to, hold on, sorry, my thing is not charging. There it is. I hope that is enough to get people into this. But the most concrete piece of advice I give any young filmmaker, who is starting out or wants to make movies and stuff, is to not make things just with your heart, but make things with your brain too. And what I mean by that is that I think a starting out filmmaker's objective is not just to make the best thing that they can do, but it's also to make the thing that gets them the most eyeballs. Because at the early stages of your career, it's not just about making things with your heart, it's about people seeing it. And there's a difference. And so my most concrete piece of advice I tell any young filmmaker is when they're starting out, never make a short film that's longer than 4 minutes. Try to make it 3 minutes long. And if you can, always think about a brand that could theoretically put their logo at the end of whatever short film that you wanted to make anyways, and have it be this branded spot, because the more people that are shooting your films out to the world, the more eyeballs you're getting. And if you can send that brand your thing and be like, hey, I made this for free, do you like it? And they like it, your career sort of how mine started. But from an inspirational standpoint, I just hope that like all of us and all of my peers and all of us on social media are amplifying this message subconsciously to young people that says that's possible, because it just takes one. And I think with 100 people, maybe that jump is a little easier.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Anish. On behalf of the world's largest group of African-American film critics, AAFCA, and our partners at HULU Entertainment, thank you for watching today, and we'll see you next time.